wants it. Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Crane, and I am the program director at the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And you are listening to Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are here to connect with you, network, discuss business, and all things creative entrepreneurship. We are streaming live out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, a room designed for Chicago's small business community, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. Upcoming event, a new professional development music series, The Music Bloom, on Tuesday, June 13th at Golden Dagger. We will have experts talk about new revenue streams and strategies. You will hear performances, network, and the most important, gain free access to our ccelearn.org platform. The ccelearn.org platform was developed in the course of a year and a half and contains 11 music business topics, 67 classes, and 200 plus articles, one-on-one mentorship from our industry experts, and more. First 25 registered participants at the event will get free access to the platform. Go to ccglobal.org to register. I'm really excited about this event. Next Tuesday, Golden Dagger, come and check it out. It's going to be great. And this is a part of also a music tour that we're going to be doing in different neighborhoods. So this is our first one. You'll see us at Pilsen, Humboldt Park, Bronzeville, Hyde Park. So we're going to basically be taking this program on the road to connect with artists in Chicago and learn about what their needs are as artists, and also provide resources and experts. But today, this Global Industry Spotlight is on my good friend Lester Ray, an ethereal Latin soul singer who brings chanteo, a popular reggaeton flow with fast melody and rhythm, to his productions. The music strips down familiar Caribbean rhythms and combines them with the modern sounds he has observed in his upbringing in Chicago. Listed at NPR World Cafe on Latin Roots, the best alternative songs of 2019, and on Chicago's very own Vocalo Radio, live from Studio 10, are 20 favorite performances of the decade. Lester Ray has spent the last few years taking his sound to a national and international audience called Juketeo, developed in collaboration with producer MoonDoctoR. Catch his latest project, putting his innovative dance music and flow on display, Strawberry Moon, released June 2nd, 2023 on all streaming platforms. Welcome, Lester.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I've watched you, as an artist, just develop and come with so many different types of sounds. So I definitely want to get into just that development and how you've been able to kind of start here and end here, and now you're doing more international collaborations. It seems like there's been a lot of growth. But can you talk about just your first kind of introduction into the music industry, what that was like?
Yeah. Coming up with that bio was difficult because of the transition of sound
Yeah,
changing so much, but
yeah.
trying to find the root of it is it's Caribbean, Puerto Rican and Chicago,
Hmm.
like those roots. And but to answer your question, the introduction to the music industry itself, I feel that I tried my hand at the music industry when I was 18 years old.
Hmm.
Um, and I tried the open mics route, and I was more involved in rap and reggaeton specifically.
Right.
And I just went wherever there were small open mics. I even did the whole pay to play thing. So I've learned so much by doing things the wrong way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
but then I go to college, and I didn't quite put music, maybe the music industry and the touring, I put all that to the side.
Right.
Um, but I still did music, and my music knowledge grew. I joined the Latin jazz ensemble, and I participated in several music activities that weren't just rap and reggaeton
Hmm.
in college, in my college years. Um, So I can't quite pinpoint exactly when because there's so many aspects of the music industry. I joined the college circuit, if you want to call
Right.
it that,
Yeah.
when I was in college. I met um, artists that were involved in that circuit who inspired me. I was writing lyrics. I was already doing rap, so I switched up my thematic concept into more social justice themes
Mm-hmm.
during those college years, and then I got invited to perform at Northwestern and in Indiana and in Ohio and Oberlin, and so I started doing that.
Right.
So that's an aspect of the music industry that many people stay there and they do that. That's an entire career. There's so many universities you can
Right.
go international in
Mm-hmm.
that lane.
And these were jazz ensembles.
No, this is me being inspired by rappers and then trying to like grab some of the ideas that I learned in Latin jazz. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe infusing salsa and jazz into my hip hop.
Yeah.
So I was more so pulling inspiration from
Right.
some of the projects I was involved in at the more credit college level.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But my personal projects were still hip hop and reggaeton.
Right.
But they were infused with more what I was learning in sociology class and what I was learning in the jazz ensemble.
Right.
Um, so that was one aspect of the music industry that I think was kinder. I was like learning. Everybody was very open to communicate and just openly talk about how they connected with this college or oh talk to this director of multicultural learning at this school to get booked over here. Everybody was a lot more open. But I think that that could be one way to describe my introduction to the
Right.
music industry.
Yeah.
But it's really when I get out of college that I start to realize, okay, I want to perform at South by Southwest. I
Right.
want to perform at Mole de Mayo,
Mm-hmm.
Taste of Chicago.
Right.
What do I have to do to like get on those stages? How consistent do I have to be musically, which also changes throughout the years with TikTok and Spotify and all that stuff. So I've been doing music before Spotify.
Yeah. 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 Me too. So I think that you bring up a great point, and it's similar to my experience as well. So I was a conservatory kid who was coming to Chicago to play live band hip hop shows with a group called Bad News Jones.
Oh,
You
dope.
know, and so we were, I was studying all this amazing, kind of world music focused in Brazil and Cuba and Ghana, and then driving to the city and playing, hip hop music, and it really felt incredible. And then you leave college, right? And this kind of supportive learning atmosphere
Yeah,
shifted, and it was like I have to pay rent.
exactly.
I have to figure out. I mean, I'm not going to be. So basically, my first job was selling women's shoes at Marshall Fields.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
trying to, figure out the music industry, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do I get my bands into these gigs? How do I pay rent as an artist and still be able to create art? And I think that's a very well, it was. I can speak for myself. It was a tough transition
Yeah.
of realizing that I also need to figure out how to generate money to pay for just living expenses,
Yeah.
and doing that as well as creating a life as an artist. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
So my experience is slightly similar, and there's like this moment where you're like, oh, what do I do to maintain living and grow? You don't just want to maintain and maintain my artistry and also grow in your
Right.
artistry. And it's very, very tough. It's very hard. But I did everything so slow. I did I mean, maybe to some people like, yo, you moved really fast. But I think that people know the story. People that know me know the story from when I started dropping EPs and projects and start doing the shows at Taste of Chicago.
Right.
But everything that led to that,
Right. It's a lot.
everything that led to getting booked at Pilsen Fest or any of those festivals, was very, very slow and gradual. There was not a moment where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put out an EP or mixtape or a project, and then I'm gonna shop it to these press outlets, and then I'm gonna send my EPK to these festivals. Like learning what an EPK was took some time. Learning that I even had to shop something to press outlets. Learning that I had to find those contacts myself. All of that super slow. I learned everything on my own.
Right.
Or through the University of YouTube or Google.
Right.
But I stayed in college. So when I graduated in 2014 from NIU. Um, I didn't stop. I
Right.
went on to get my master's. Everybody encouraged me. They're like, "Hey, if you sign up for the scholarship and you get a free ride, why not keep going?" So I was like, "All right, fine. Let me try to sign up for the scholarship. If I do get the scholarship and I do get a free ride for my master's, then I'll just stay. I'll keep
What'd
doing
you
it."
get your master's in?
Higher education.
Oh, fantastic.
So very interesting story too, because as I'm getting my master's in higher education, there's so many moments where I want to just quit. It's getting tough. I'm writing 10-page papers almost every Monday, one semester, and touring. So things in the music industry started to pick up. So when I say slow, I mean that I
This
was
is around
still doing
2014.
music. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
2014, 2015. 2015 is when I dropped my first EP. I graduated in 2017 with my master's. So 2015 to 2017 is really where the name Luster Ray really started to take off. 2015 is the first EP I dropped. 2016 and 2017, I'm keeping consistency with dropping projects. I did tour my first year after dropping the EP. I did learn how to shop projects to press. I'm getting press on Remezcla and NPR on the first year after my EP. Um, and so things are moving really fast, but I'm also still in my master's program. So I'm like, okay, I feel like I have one foot here, one foot there, and
Right.
they're both just two horses going really fast in the opposite direction. In certain ways. But I maintained the course. All my friends in the master's program, they were like, "No, let's keep doing this. You can do it." And the music friends were just like, we'll still be here." So we get to 2017. I finally finished my master's degree. Rauner, the governor, slashes the education budget for all higher learning institutions by 30%. So the entry into the workforce is clearly like just cut.
Right.
People who were in positions of assistant directors for the Latino Culture Center now have to take on the activities component, or everybody basically. And the story goes for every industry.
Right.
Everybody had to do more work
Right. More
for the
jobs. Right.
same exact pay,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
sometimes even less pay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or if you were brand new, like myself, I just got a degree in it. They weren't looking to really hire without the experience.
Right.
So I could have worked a little harder to possibly get into the workforce, but at that moment, I took that sign as like, you know what, everything's going really well on the music side. Let me stay on this lane, and let me just from 2017 to 2019 keep growing in that way. And that's pretty much what happened. By 2019, I'm doing 2 to 3 tours in 1 year. I dropped 3 EPs. That's when NPR listed me as
Yep.
top 50 songs of the year. Vocalo ended the decade with also a piece of like top 20 favorite performances of the decade. And I was just feeling like things are moving in a really positive direction. Then comes the pandemic.
Right. All right. So we'll start with the pandemic. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about your music strategy of from 2014, 2015, up until the pandemic hit. You're talking about I was touring, I was putting out EPs. What was your some of your kind of ideas or strategies that you saw that were working as you're developing your career over those years?
Yeah. Still debating whether those strategies still work now.
Well, it changes. We'll
They
talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
Well, let's
get
talk
there.
about the
We'll get
strategies that
there.
you had at that time.
But the 2015 and 2019 strategy. 2014, I was still in college, NIU. I did graduate that year. And 2014, maybe like May to October, was creating all the music. So I wasn't necessarily. I was performing in Pilsen on congas. I was going to Cumbia Sasso.
I actually real quick note. The first time I saw you
Yeah.
was playing congas in I feel like it was the Cumbia Sasso people's house.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You were playing in the basement.
Yeah.
I think that was the
They
first
used
time
to have basement parties.
with a pretty sweet band. And because
Yeah.
Harold lives
Mhm.
pretty close to there, and we popped over.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Itinala,
Yeah,
it was his house.
yeah, him and
He
Tiffany's
ran the
house.
Cumbia
Yeah,
Salsa party along with
Etienne. Yeah.
other folks as well.
Cool. So keep going. Yeah. So you're playing.
Yeah. They were definitely the 2014. I meet the Cumbia Salsa crew, and this game's always been about who you know, what community you foster and build in. So 2014, 2015, I was really working with the Cumbia Sasso like crew.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whether it was just like, hey, can I just join you guys on stage playing congas,
Mm-hmm.
or your house parties, or they had another party called Alegria at Harvey's, where I would just come through play congas. Congas was my way to just kind of just get my foot in the door
Right. I
and
love that.
play along with the DJs,
Mm-hmm.
and then meet people. I met a band called Subele. They're telling me that they needed a conga player. I was telling them I needed a band to like put my music out there in more of a performance setting. So in the beginning, 2014, 2015, I was performing with Subele as their conga player, and then I would come up to be the front man for maybe 2 or 3 of my own songs. Um, by 2015, the band is definitely my project's finally coming out. So the band is pretty much a makeup of like a few members from Subele with maybe a few people that I have met in Cumbia Sasso and by playing congas around town. Um, so my strategy in the beginning was just to meet the people that I need to meet. Like, yes, I wanted to play a double door, but I knew that I needed to build towards that.
Right.
Um, I think Dos Santos and I started around the same time, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So the conga player, Pete, and I, we've known each other since I was like 18. We used to be in a salsa band together. Back when I was doing like the hip hop stuff, I still used the congas to kind of get my way in, but Pete was the conguero for that band, and he's like, hey, if you want to sing these like 70s soul tracks that we do in salsa version. So it's always been about who you meet, and kind of fostering those relationships. um so 2015, my strategy had always been, at least at this point, to create as much music, not even as much now it's that, but to create music with an intention. It almost felt like every EP felt like an album.
And
Even
how many songs were on the EP that you were putting?
5.
Yeah.
So they were like short, intentional albums in a way. Um, EPs really should be like a random collection of songs that just showcase your work. But I feel like the way I was creating these EPs, they were to solidify a sound, a style, or kind of a message. So the first EP I ever dropped was called The Blue Lion in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And the Blue Lion was, to me, blues, Chicago, and then lion. My family's from Ponce, Puerto Rico, and so the lion is like the symbol of Ponce, Ponce de Leon, and comes
Mm-hmm.
from all that. So Blue Lion was like the nickname that I gave myself, and it was very boogaloo, Latin soul, cha cha cha, forward with beats. So it wasn't necessarily live boogaloo, and it wasn't necessarily boogaloo the way we understand it in the 60s, but it was definitely the cha-cha-cha rhythm given a little bit more umph with the hip-hop vibe.
Right.
So I started there, and the first time I released it, I talked to Seat Laling Gallery in Pilsen, and I'm asking if I could host my event here. They have a bar that they're running there. They kind of break down what the numbers are going to look like. This is all brand new to me.
Right.
This is like my first time like taking charge, but I've seen how Cumbia Sasso does it. I've seen how Subale has been able to like kind of just get into like smaller block parties and festivals as they're coming up to. And so like I think that I'm confident enough to try this, especially like having the degree. I honestly think that college gave me the confidence to speak more intelligently to like bar owners or venue owners and things
Right.
like that.
Absolutely.
But the strategy is pretty much release it. I contacted my connections in the Puerto Rican community to see if there was any journalists that could write about it. I was reading this magazine called La Respuesta back in the day. I don't think they're around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they were centering Puerto Rican stories in Humboldt Park. So I was like, hey, I'm releasing a project. The first show is going to be in Pilsen. Would you guys like to write about it? So she calls, we do an interview over the phone, and she writes about it. You know, tickets are on sale, like go to this day to support this project. That's my first like introduction to like what it's like to reach out to press, what it's like to get a write up, what it's like to choose your own venue, hire
But
the
you did all
DJs,
of that.
flyers. Yeah,
Right. You did all of that
the
yourself.
flyer,
Right. The venue,
everything.
the
The press. I had no manager at
Right.
this exact moment yet. Like Yeah, I did all everything by
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah. And
But it
so,
worked.
right.
So repeated it. Like from 2015 to 2019, I just repeated it in larger and larger scales. It just became bigger venues, bigger write-ups, more connections, bigger opening acts. It just kept rolling and rolling and rolling, kind of like a snowball effect, really.
And you were, and so, and I love this idea, and I think it's something that happens with a lot of artists, um, where you look at how people are. Well, I'll speak for myself. You know, when you go and play a club date, let's say with
Mhm.
3 other groups, you make no money at all.
Yeah,
And the curation of the crowd or the bill can be kind of random.
yeah,
So one crowd goes in,
mhm,
listens to it, they bounce when their band is done, right?
yeah,
So there's just not a cohesive kind of feel with the event. And so
yeah,
uh, so what happened to me was like, well, I actually, if I find a space, I can pay, you know, I can make more money for the band, I can
yeah,
pay artists better, and then I can actually curate the space in a way that, you know, I feel like will connect with my community. And it
yeah.
sounds like that's exactly what you did,
DIY
you know.
was the way to go.
Right.
I
Yeah.
found that out like right off the bat. I kind of feel like a part of me, the reason why I still say my growth has always been kind of slow is because I stayed in the DIY route. I found something that worked and I stayed there.
Yeah.
I didn't really shoot for the chop shop, sub T, even double door when it was around. I didn't really shoot for that. I'd maybe get invited to do a set at Chop Shop, or I would get invited to sub T. Eventually, by 2019, I'm doing shows at sub T. Like
Right.
things just do like snowball into like bigger venues at that point. But I didn't come out the gate being like, oh, I want to like headline double door. Like,
Well, and I think in the DIY space, you are building meaningful connections with people
yeah,
at a
yeah,
way like more like at a way better level than you are at a club.
yes,
That's just
yeah,
the reality.
yeah,
Like, I mean, you know, when I was coming up, kind of a little before you, you know, Q4 when it was on North Avenue
yeah,
was a big space where, you know, there was Dario and Shazam Bangles and, you know, Sound Conspiracy and I forgot the band that that Dario was in at that time, but there was just like this whole community
yeah,
of people, but because we all went to that space weekly and watched, you know, there was just a great community.
yeah.
And I think that's a great example for artists
Mhm.
of like, you know, and then when you go to that club, you've already built up,
Exactly.
you know.
So Q4 was actually the first space that so there's this DJ named Victor Montañez, DJ Rebel X. I met him at NIU because he came to talk to us the students, and we made this connection because I opened up for him at NIU. And he's like, "Hey, I'd love to have you on congas or as a vocalist for some of my stuff." So he has a show at Q4 back when they were by
Yep.
Milwaukee, one of the buildings.
In Armitage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think closer to the highway
Yeah.
actually. But
Right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
um, and this is my first time ever walking into the space that would eventually be the regulars, really. And I meet
Augusta, not
yes,
Armitage.
Augusta, Augusta. Yeah, way closer to
I
the
was
high. I was
thinking
like,
about
I don't know
yes,
if
that's
Armitage
not
and
Armitage,
Milwaukee
no.
close to the highway, but yeah, it's Augusta and Milwaukee. And it's this tall building. We
Yeah.
go into it, and then it's the first time I ever hear the word or the my name Luster Ray said on the microphone. And it's by Logan Lu.
Right.
And it's the first
Shout
time
out to Logan Lou.
yeah, it's the first time I meet Logan Lu as well. And he's like, we have DJ Rebel Lex and sharing his new song, which is not even out, Luster Ray. And it was the first time I perform in this space. And I meet these people that eventually I find out are part of this is before Cumbia Sasso. This is before my EP. It's Q4 was the very first place I ever performed at as Luster Ray. Um, but it wasn't the last time, but I didn't know what happened to Q4. Then I found out that they were on Rockwell
Right.
in Humboldt Park, and then we still worked together there. I did actually do a music video release party there later on in 2018. Um, and so like Q4 is still, I don't know if there's like, I feel like there's these moments where I find out what Q4 is doing and then we plug right back in.
Right.
Um,
That's
but
it.
like that's DIY space.
Yeah, it's
DIY
DIY
space,
space.
they're open and they close and they
Yeah.
open and they close. And
That
that's one of the things I found out about the DIY experience.
mm-hmm.
It's a double-edged sword. I think it's necessary. Think I can speak about almost every experience in my life as something that I enjoy, but something that was frustrating.
Right.
And whether it's writing a paper, and you're like, well, it has to be Times Roman, it has to be this indentation, indents and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But the writing of the paper helped me learn the whatever the subject was. The DIY experience was something that I think was super fruitful. I made real friendships. But I think the pandemic showed me um how fast things can just go away.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so now I'm learning these things. Developing a large Excel sheet with like, here are all the venues I performed in, here are the number of attendants, here are the ticket sales, will help me eventually get a booking agent so that I can be like, here, booking agent, here are all the venues I performed at, these are the numbers, these are the ticket sales. This is what I'm capable of getting. These are the people I opened up with, or these are the people that opened for me. Can you help me get a show in California, in Los Angeles, in Austin, Texas, or in Berlin? They need to see those stats and numbers. By staying in the DIY scene, I learned that I'm kind of not letting myself do that.
Okay, let's stop there because this is a very good point. Okay, awesome. So, you know, talk about now this new, not new Lester, but now, okay,
Mhm.
so you're in a new space.
Yeah,
You see, okay, the DIY space, you've built community,
yeah,
you've built a good following, you've made meaningful connections, super important. Now it's time to get outside of
yes,
Chicago and play some new shows, right?
yeah.
So, you've organized your shows, you've kind of shown, okay, these are my numbers in certain spaces.
Yeah.
How did you find a booking agent?
So I don't have a booking agent.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never quite had a booking agent. Even the shows that I performed outside of Chicago,
You've booked,
I've booked.
right?
So the shows in Berlin, the shows in Texas, the
Stop
tours,
there. How'd you get into Berlin?
everything's a very funny story. Like I feel like every show I've done outside of the city has always been, it's just a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure out how this connection can help me get to this goal, and how we can help each other out. So with Berlin, Michael Reyes was the person that got me to Berlin. Michael Reyes used to work at Bate Urbano back when Bate Urbano was a thing in Humboldt Park. Then he moved to Detroit, and he's been working with Detroit. We are culture creators. He's been fostering music, video, photography, a bunch of kids in Detroit, working the grant angle
Mm-hmm.
in Detroit to really help foster a artistic community in Detroit. Um, he was the one who got a grant to do an exchange between Berlin and Detroit hip hop. Um, but in that, he's bringing the rappers from Berlin and the rappers from Detroit to Chicago. He's always maintained that open connection with the Humboldt Park community in Chicago. He comes to Chicago. He does a show here. I'm one of the performers. I meet the people from Berlin as well. And Michael Reyes is like, "Would you like to come with us to Berlin?" There's one angle that I haven't really been able to figure out in Berlin, is the Latin showcases out there. There's definitely Latino music, Latino parties, reggaeton parties happening in Berlin, and we would love it if you can do your thing, which this is the thing that we're talking about right now that
Right.
I've developed, my ability to just go on Instagram and reach out and find the angle, know how to speak to people. And I did that. I basically found the reggaeton parties in Berlin,
On Instagram,
on Instagram,
message them.
messaged them. Yep, yep. I found collectives that did video work. I found collectives that did interviews. I found about two or three collectives that did reggaeton parties, specifically, or global based parties. And I reached out to all of them, and we were able to get one show where all the collectives actually came together, as an introduction to Michael Reyes and his Detroit kids, and myself. Um, and that's literally how that one just came out
That's
to be.
awesome.
It was just, it felt very organic. It felt just very like, hey, like, this is who I am. I'd love to perform out there. And if ever you're in Chicago, I can definitely help book a show out here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and important for artists out there.
Hmm.
If you're playing in a certain genre, or your community, which by this time your community,
Yeah.
you know what genre in, and finding those connection pieces, and then offering something as well too,
Yeah.
being like, listen, I mean, that's how you build community. It's like, I have this thing, if it would help me to get out there, and then I can help you get a show here. And I think those kind of show exchanges are really
Yeah. And those are a lot of
impactful.
exchanges because, I mean, it's a flight. it's a hotel.
Yep.
And the venues are like, wait, who are you? You're not really a household name in Berlin. You're
Right.
just starting to come up. Why would we get you a hotel, or why would we get you a flight and pay you? So Berlin was a difficult sell. I mean, if you really think about it, but it really flowed naturally. It was Michael Reyes was like, I'll help you get to Berlin if you help me build these connections, and then can you also in exchange help me put a show on for some of my Detroit collectives in Chicago. So later on, we did like a Bad Bunny versus Drake show in Chicago.
Awesome.
So it's like it's just a lot of exchanges
Yeah.
in different ways, and even the Bad Bunny versus Drake show, I'm still making money off of the show later
Right.
on. So it's a lot of angles, and it's a lot of just keeping tabs. It's like I feel like I have 12 tabs open.
Yeah, and I think that's important for any artist to hear, is that you've tried many different things,
Mhm.
and then it's like, okay, this is kind of working.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put a tab on that.
Yeah.
This didn't work at all. So that's
Yes.
gotta fall off.
Yep.
And
Or I can minimize this tab because later on it might work.
right, but this is not they're not ready for this.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're such a great person to interview about just this process, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
no
I'm very honest about it.
well, no, there's
'Cause
also just
this
no one
is
way. There's no one
there
way
is
to
no
do it,
one way.
right?
No.
It's like you're like, well, I was playing in bands, and then I developed my own sound, and then I would
Mhm.
and I love the idea of my congas of being kind of like how I got to connect with people
Yeah.
and get into those scenes. Because I also did a similar thing where I played drums with DJs. It was
Nice. Yeah.
like that's how I met a ton of people.
Yeah.
If it paid more than my parking at that time, I was good with it. So we're post pandemic. It
Yeah.
seems like your career has kind of exploded a little bit, but talk about your music strategy now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what do you feel like is working for Lester?
Okay. So I will say that we are talking about things that became fruitful, right?
Right.
So the Berlin,
Right.
like, oh, how did you perform in Berlin? But I tried Vienna, I tried Switzerland, I tried. There's a lot of things that I'm not talking about. There's
Right.
so much, and I think this is super important for everyone to know. There's so many no's before the yes. There's just so many.
Yes, so
But you also have to learn not to be the annoying person.
Right.
Like it's an art. The art of the ask is really an art.
Mhm.
The music business is also an art. And I know there's so many musicians that just I feel like maybe it's the cool thing to say. I just don't really care about the business. I hate the business side. I only think about the art. But there's so much advice on Instagram, so much advice everywhere. Um, I even wrote on Instagram, like, today we're gonna talk about how I just do me. Because there's
Mhm.
really I don't have advice that will work for this one person. Somebody else's advice might. Um, but there's a general don't give up, grit, like
Also, your
energy.
experience, though, I
Yeah.
think anyone's experience has value, and
Yeah. Yeah.
for an artist up and coming to hear like,
Yeah.
oh wow, he like started in bands, and then he found these people on Instagram, and he was putting stuff out, and he found this. I mean, all of these kinds
Yeah.
of
Yeah. I mean,
things.
I find value in almost all the advice I hear.
Right.
But you do have to learn to also filter. You don't have the time to try it all.
Right. Right.
So
And
it's
it's not. Yeah. Right. And also, you are you.
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
that's
Some
important.
things don't work. Some advice might be more rock specific. Other advice might be more rap specific.
Right.
But I'm sorry. To
Yeah.
get back to your
Strategy
question,
now.
strategy now.
Yeah.
I think that now, because of how the internet has, like, the internet's always been a thing, whether it was Vine or YouTube with Justin Bieber or
Mhm.
Vine with Soldier Boy, every TikTok with Lil Nas X. Every platform has had its moment of like really blowing up people. Um, and I think that now it's just the internet is commonplace. So where we used to like market heavily on the internet, now marketing has to change. It can't just be a flyer. So strategy has to change as far as promotion. So the perception that I'm blowing up is it almost feels like a perception.
You're a
It's
persona.
well, no, no,
Oh,
like
like an
Instagram,
yeah.
like
See, see.
literally like content creation, putting out a lot of content. I mean, there's even I forgot where I read this, where you have to tell somebody something 6 times on the internet for them to finally click on it and to actually go listen to your song. So it's like finding 6 different ways to consistently say the exact same thing. And I think that it gives this perception like wow, he's really working. He's really like out there. He's like marketing heavily, and it's I can create months worth of content in one day. I could spend a whole day instead of shooting a music video, creating small content pieces, and then that is the new strategy now. It's create 60 small pieces for the same price of a music video,
Right.
and those 60 small pieces can live on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram. Um, and sometimes I don't have the time to do all that because even a music video itself takes a lot of time. But the strategy has been to figure out social media. Um, my strategy and creation has also changed. So it used to be let me create 5 songs, 6 songs, way before anybody even knows I'm creating these songs. And then I'll put out this body of work that people will listen to hopefully over and over again and really indulge in it. This time I just released June 2nd 6 songs that were already released throughout the span of last July, Asota, Jardín in November, January was Shy Tea, February, no, January, yeah, January was Shy Tea, February was Tanta Flores, March was Brazos, and I was at South by for that one. And then April, I took a break. Boss, released in May, and May 26th was the song Boss dropped. And then the week after was the whole EP, which compiled all of those songs. So nothing like it was different for me. Nothing like brand new was in that EP necessarily, except for Paz as the single leading right up to it. So it felt like, and I've also read this one a long time ago, it almost feels like what you're doing is you're dropping episodes of a TV show and then you're selling the DVD compilation of like the whole season.
I love that.
Here's season 1.
Yep.
Here's season 2. And I don't know if I'm going to keep doing that strategy, but it it allows for 2 strategies to coexist at the same time. One, singles. Just drop singles. Everyone's like, hey, you have to be consistent, whether it's consistently creating content or consistently singing on social media, even if the song doesn't exist on a platform for people to stream. Um, but just consistently showing the world that this is who you are. I'm a singer or conguero. And then the second is EPs or albums. So there's 2 strategies you could choose from, but the releasing singles and then compiling them into like season 1 Lustre, season 2 Lustre, it allows you to kind of use both strategies.
Have you heard of the waterfall method? So this
Maybe not
is
the term, but
it's a similar type of thing where a lot of people what they're doing is they're putting singles out,
Mhm.
and then they basically take it off as a single and add it to an EP. So it's basically like
Oh, okay, yeah,
you're building an an EP or an album,
yeah,
but you're using the ISRC code so
yes,
that you don't lose the numbers and all that kind of stuff.
exactly.
So it's, and I think I love this analogy of series
Yeah, that's how I read it.
into a DVD. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's really important, and the idea of how expensive music videos can be,
Yeah.
being able to shoot 60 pieces of content. So that being said, what platform have you found the most success of marketing yourself?
Man, I trust email more than anything. I honestly feel like, and maybe I'll be wrong, but I feel that just like MySpace ended, um, that TikTok or Instagram just won't be around 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But email seems to have always
Right.
just lasted throughout everything, and so does YouTube.
Right.
Like YouTube's really like held
So do
strong.
you use YouTube Shorts?
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna lie. I want to.
Right.
I haven't.
Yeah. No, it's
And then TikTok as well. I got the ball rolling on TikTok. Um, I didn't see the instant gratification that like a lot of people claim they get out of TikTok, or there wasn't like instant like exposure. But also that's because my TikTok is brand new, about a year or 2 or
right.
something like that. So I'm still stuck on Instagram, but Instagram's very frustrating sometimes. Like I'll have I don't know, like I think yesterday I posted that in my story that Princess Nokia commented on my Juketeo announcement that I'm dropping my EP release party as a Juketeo party for June 23rd. But Princess Nokia comments. And so I posted on my stories that, and that story right now is still up. It's like I don't know, 3 to 4 to 500 views, which is a lot for me. But on a normal weekly basis, it's like 30. to have like 5,000 followers, and maybe like 30 people will see the story. So it just fluctuates.
Right. You're like,
And
what's really
I
happening here?
can't really understand it. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know what the rules are. I've read
It
about
changes though.
marketing. I've read
Yeah,
about all this strategy with social media, but it just fluctuates so much. I can't understand it really. And
yeah,
I think that maybe they just want me to pay for ads, and I'll try that. Then I see some success, but I'm like, am I just feeding into y'all only giving me successful numbers when I pay?
right.
And so like now is Instagram only pay to play? It's starting to
Yeah,
feel like. So I will say that you've caught me at a time, and even for this interview, where I am still figuring out strategy, like
yeah,
from the pandemic, because I feel like post pandemic is what, just last year. 2022, it felt like everything was kind of like open again, and then 2023, like even I went to South by Southwest last year, and last year was the first year since the pandemic where they were finally like open. They did like a virtual thing in 2021, but 2022 they were physically open.
mm-hmm.
I went, and it wasn't as packed as prior years. So we
Right.
thought 2023, oh, South by is going to be really packed. It's going to be a lot going on. And it felt more packed than 2022, but it's kind of like what we were talking about before we even walked into the room, where it's like it's really hard to get people to come out.
Yeah,
Um, like I've read articles where people are coming out too much. They're all outside. Everyone's outside, but I think that when it comes to events, buying tickets, going to a, a curated night, it is a little bit more. Well, I can just go home. Why spend $20 to watch a band when I can see this band who just literally spent the last 2-3 years curating their entire presence on the internet? So
yeah. It's
I'm still figuring out strategy.
yeah. I think too. It comes back to how do you connect with your community, right?
Hmm.
So those 5,000 followers, you want all 5,000 to be seeing, at least a high percentage of them to be seeing all your posts,
Yeah,
right? That feels like a fair thing, right?
yeah,
Someone
yeah,
someone clicked follow for Lester Ray because they're interested in your music or they like what you're doing.
yeah, yeah,
So, and I think that's going to be an interesting thing moving forward of like how artists are able
hmm,
to kind of control their own communities,
yeah,
and use tech tools to to communicate with them. I mean, Instagram's a great tech tool, but you're not really
yeah,
in charge, right?
yeah.
And it was stories and then it was reels, and
Hmm.
it depends on what they're feeling.
Yeah,
And obviously the pay to play is a big thing, and I also love how you're just saying, the strategy is always expanding and changing
yeah.
depending on where we're at. So, in terms of your artist career, how do you deal just with kind of fear and doubt around your projects, around releases, around failure? What's kind of your star for that?
Man. So that's a tough question. I feel like I probably had a moment even last night of doubt
Right.
and fear and things like that. And then I remember, so I'm a dad, and right away, if I start, I don't sometimes have the time to stay in a place of doubt. Um, and if my baby needs me, I kind of just have to will myself out of it and take care of like my son, and then we just have fun. And I've been just living life and enjoying it, you know. I'm with my fiance and things like that. So it's been um I haven't necessarily, let me see, do I have a coping mechanism for doubt? Let's see.
Right.
I know when my days are really long, I end my day, I wind down, I will smoke a little bit, but I don't know if that's necessarily coping with doubt. I feel like I'm like, you've met me, or you've asked me to be here at a moment where I think I need to find a coping mechanism, because I think I'm like at this moment in my life where I don't want to be throwing a bunch of darts hoping something lands.
Oh man,
And
I can relate to that.
I think that because my strategy is changing and I'm in the middle of like a transition right now, you've caught me at a moment where I do feel like I'm throwing a lot of darts. I feel like there's a lot more no's than yes, because there's so much happening on the internet. There's so much more less personal interactions happening. Like the Berlin thing was really, really cool, but like now it's all that. It feels like everything is like a DM request or an email request, or it just feels like everything's super disconnected. Even my press contacts, when I went to South by Southwest in 2017 with Cumbia Sasso, I made personal relationships and press contacts with Remezcla and
Right.
with NPR. I like met them. Now it's the turnover rate was so high in the pandemic that everyone is behind a screen,
Right.
and it's,
And
hey,
it's
I
new
know you
people
don't know
too,
who.
probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Turnover rate was really high. It's a bunch of new people. The people that I used to talk to in the Mezcla are no longer there. People who I used to talk to at Vocalo are no longer there. There's just a lot of new people. Um, and so it's not even if whether I'm in my head, are they ignoring my requests? It's like no, they're being flooded with so many requests because that's the only way to really get in contact with them because we're not seeing each other in person, or at least we haven't in the last couple years because of the pandemic. So there's been a very like I'm changing strategy. I'm gonna see if the Strawberry Moon strategy works out. I can't tell you a success just yet. Um, and then I've also done all the festivals in Chicago. Prior 2019, I headlined Latinx Fest 2020 in July, and I'm starting to feel like it's time to get out of Chicago.
Mm.
Um, so then it's like new ground. It's well, how do I do that exactly? I've done shows in Atlanta. I've done my own tours, but I think the next step is getting the booking agent. That's why I was able to like talk about that. Like, oh, what's the steps I need to do to get a booking agent? Okay, those are the steps. And now I have a manager as well, so that helps a lot too. So now it's how do you professionalize your corner so that you can move more effectively farther? Because in the city, in your block, literally, I live right down the street from Sitlalin. I can go talk to Sitlalin. I can go talk to Penny Whistle. I can keep doing events in these locations. I can maintain. But if I want to grow, um, I need to professionalize my corner so that I have farther reach.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's not DIY because the DIY venues, they also have a large turnover rate because of the pandemic. So everyone that I knew in whether it was AMFM and their space, they're no longer a physical space. They're still in existence, and I mean, I love Sierra and all the work that she does at AMFM. Or it was the dojo was another space that I used to work out of,
Mm-hmm.
but then they moved to New Mexico. Um, Different career paths.
Right.
The people that ran it. So you name it, any DIY space, like people move on. And the same is true in the professional setting, like I'm mentioning with press and things like that. But if you have like your managers and your booking agents, they build relationships with the venues, not necessarily with the person. So it does become a little less personal, but then it allows you, like myself specifically, to just focus on raising my son and being a good husband.
Right.
And so then my booking agent can help me maintain a career as a performer, and my manager can help me build the connections and relationships that I need to also maintain the project Strawberry Moon flowing and keep me as the artist. So it is a growth. So like I mentioned earlier, the DIY is very personal. It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, um, you also have to like professionalize.
Yeah, and I love that term professionalize. Like building a team around the art to be
Mhm.
able to get into new places, right?
Yeah.
There's the things that you know and there's things you don't know. So it's like finding the right people that can help you with that. Can you just before we wrap up today, talk about where people can find the music, kind of what's next, what's up and coming for
Yeah. Yeah.
besides this whole figuring out, okay, how do I get into some new spaces?
Yeah.
What's next
Yeah.
for Lester Ray?
So I have some exciting things coming up. June 23rd is Juketeo. Juketeo is the name of a song that I dropped in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's a word I made up that feels like a reggaeton way of saying juke party,
Right.
but it's a fusion of reggaeton, global bass with house and juke and ghetto house. I had my first Juketeo party outside of Chicago was in March at South by Southwest with Peligrosa, the label that actually put out the song Juketeo. So Juketeo is coming back to Chicago June 23rd,
Awesome.
and it's going to be also my EP release party. So I'll be performing Strawberry Moon in its entirety. We have a DJ from New York headlining. Her name's HD. She's on tour right now with Princess Nokia, hence why the Princess
Right.
Nokia
Yeah,
comment and stuff like
that's
that.
awesome.
Because I was able to book her touring DJ HD, who I met last year at Mas Flow when she was spinning for Cachora, and Cachora and I have a song together. So I was on stage at Mas Flow and I met the DJ. It's again organic relationships. You just meet them and it's beautiful. But Constantine's also part of that lineup. He was just sampled by Skrillex in his album this year. He's a Chicago resident, like DJ. Janesita from Juke, Mexico, who's between Mexico City and Chicago as well. Axel, reggaeton artist, who's also from Chicago, is doing really well. And it's just, I'm like really excited about the lineup.
Yeah, it's awesome. Where's it at?
It's gonna be at Penny Whistle.
Okay,
So
awesome.
it's also real close to the house.
Right.
My mom lives down the street, so she watches the baby. I go party, throw the event, then come back home.
Yeah.
Then July 23rd, we have Reina Tropical is coming to Navy Pier.
Nice.
And so I'll be opening for Reina Tropical. Mafia Tropical is coming from Los Angeles. That's a duo made up of Paco Peor and Nino Francois. Nino Francois is from LA, Paco's from Little Village. And Gio Chamba is also coming into town.
Is that for Latinx or is that just for Navy Pier?
No, it's a Navy Pier. Yeah,
it's
just a Navy Pier lineup with Reina Tropical. Reina Tropical is touring.
Yeah.
So they were able to book a show at Navy Pier. And I'm excited for that one, July 23rd.
That's awesome.
I think Latinx Fest is in August.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that lineup as well. But I also feel like I didn't answer your doubt and fear question.
I'm gonna be thinking about that one.
Yeah. I feel like let me give a token of hope to people, because I think doubt is the number one thing that every artist will go through. I mean, that's why we're searching for answers. That's why we're on the internet. That's why we're looking at advice. That's why somebody might even be tuned into this. There's like doubt that what they're doing currently isn't working, and they want to possibly see what somebody else might be doing. Doubt is, I guess I wanted to find like, well, this is how this is my routine to get rid of doubt. But doubt is inevitable. It almost feels like yin yang. It's just part of your journey. You might doubt what you're doing. You might doubt your project. And I don't know if I have any specific way to get over it or like routine or something like that.
Right.
But I do feel that I find inspiration in the people that send me messages telling me like, hey, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. I find inspiration in seeing the crowd move and enjoyment. And whether your track has 30 listeners, 1,000, 50,000 listeners, I try to remember that I'm doing this for myself. Even when you get caught up in the business and you're like, oh, this is a product I need to sell. I need to get it off the shelves. And music business does get in the way of that sometimes and causes the doubt. It does, like, why am I not booked at this festival? Why am I not headlining here?
Right.
Why can't I just move my track a little bit? Doubt seems inevitable, but it's kind of like the saying, it's you will fall, but it's about how you get up. You will doubt what you're doing. You will have fear, but it's how you conquer that. So grit, I think that was ingrained in me with my dad, with college. Hard work will always exist. Just you could be afraid of it to the point where you're just frozen, or you could be afraid of it to the point where you want to conquer that fear, so you're no longer scared of that aspect of what you need to conquer.
Yeah,
because there will be new fears. I'm experiencing the new fear of putting myself out there to booking agents and getting to Latin America and Europe more often. That's like new doubts, new fears. But and then there's a lot, but I've noticed now that I've conquered doubts and fears that I used to have that I no longer think about anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's progress, right? I mean, if we're able to grow through some of the, I don't have those fears anymore, but I have a new set.
Yeah,
like a new set of fears when you're a father, right? I mean, we could have a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer, and for everyone out there, check out what Lester Ray's doing. His marketing, his all the stuff that he's doing on Instagram is really high quality, top notch. obviously he's expanded his career, he's grown his career, he has a lot of knowledge of things that work and a lot of knowledge of things that don't work, which we don't always talk about as much, which I like that you really brought that up. But again, thanks for coming and talking to me
Yeah, yeah.
today. I think we could talk all day about
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
different things of being a musician and the issues surrounding the music industry in Chicago and in general.
Oh yeah, don't get me started with that.
Yeah,
I can get specific about the Latino music industry in Chicago and the rise, and yeah,
yeah.
we could talk about that some other time,
Yeah.
or just hit me up in my DMs.
Right, exactly, exactly. Or and just to announce, as well, that we're doing this neighborhood tour where we're going to different spaces. So I'm actually hoping that you'll join us for one of those as well to talk to artists, and
Oh,
maybe
that'd be
we can
great.
bring up that subject as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, my name is Daniel Crane. I'm the program director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and you have been listening to another Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are streaming out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. Thank you to Comcast Business and Shore for providing the tools necessary to make our programming possible. Visit cceglobal.org to register for free workshops offered by our partners. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, and tune in next week for another episode of Global Industry Spotlight. However, don't tune in next week because I'm going on vacation. So we'll be off for 2 weeks, but we'll start back in July. Look out for the announcements of our guests in July. It's going to be pretty exciting. So anyways, wishing everyone a great end to their week, and we will speak with you soon. Take care.